board met tonight in executive session. We're now ready to continue with the public portion of our meeting. We had a couple of communications this week, which were not official board communications, but one was a note of concern about the spread of vaping, not just among our students, but among all students everywhere, with a request that MAC money, Municipal Assistance Committee money, which is used for substance abuse programs, be used for programs on vaping. So I know the administration will follow up on that. And we had a parental concern about a specific program at Linden that's been addressed by the appropriate administrator. The board president's report will be short and sweet. Tomorrow, the governor will be in Cliffside Park to sign S2, which is the legislation that makes some changes to the SFRA funding formula under which we all live with greater or lesser degrees of satisfaction. That is the changes include those that brought us a little bit of extra state aid this year, for which we're very grateful. The plan is for the formula mechanism to move towards full funding over a 7-year period. We shall see. If the state resources are there, perhaps it will happen. Okay, and the board is in the process of formulating its goals for 2018-19. The board members now have the draft copies of those goals. We will have occasion to discuss them and approve them at our September 11th meeting. And now, superintendent's report.
Thank you. Several personnel items on the agenda I just want to talk about. The high school being one of the more important aspects of the agenda. With the addition of the middle school assistant principal, we have an opportunity to really take a look at who we have in the role of assistant principal for the middle school and the high school. I had discussions with the personnel committee, with the new high school principal, and we just discussed just what lies in front of us and what we'd like to see that position, and having a new high school principal, what he needs in place in order to be successful in leading the students, the curriculum, and the staff forward. So we decided to place Keisha Harris as our middle school assistant principal. Keisha has a wealth of experience in administration. She was assistant principal here at Ridgewood Avenue, so she has a strong understanding of this, what the students are getting prior to coming to going up to the high school. She's also very familiar with the student body and the parents. She's only been removed from Ridgewood Avenue for 2 years. And we're moving Tim Liddy over to the high school assistant principal. Tim served a number of years as the athletic director at the high school. Prior to that, he was a social studies teacher at the high school. So I believe he's been an administrator for 12 or 13 years now. And again, just a wealth of experience and understanding of how the building operates, procedures, just a historic understanding of what has occurred and why it has occurred, and how to best move forward based on things that have happened in the past. So he'll be a great resource for John Lawler. Tonight those recommendations are on the agenda, and that will leave us an opening for the athletic director, director of student activities, and that we currently are advertising and anticipating opening. So we're excited about all the changes at the high school and opportunities that are created because of those changes. Betsy mentioned state aid. We did receive a large portion of state aid, additional state aid that Finance Committee met with and discussed on how to best use that. And I'm sure during reports that Tim Keppel will report out on how we're using it. But you know, we're thinking about how to make sure that we are just in a financial situation that's solid for the district, and making sure we're using that in the most prudent way that we're putting ourselves in a strong position for future years. Just give you an update on park. It's been recommended from the DOE that some changes for next year in the park exams. They're proposed to eliminate geometry and algebra 2 at the high school level, keeping algebra 1, which is currently a high school graduation test, and also eliminating English 9 and English 11, and keeping English 10, which is also a high school graduation assessment. So that's going to put a lot less stress on some of the testing that occurs at the high school. They also propose to shorten the exam. Typically at the elementary level, exams last about 8 hours, are scheduled to last 8 hours. They're going to reduce it down to 6 hours. So we're happy to see some changes. Hopefully they're approved by the state legislators. The State Board of Ed, which, do you know when they're meeting?
They have done the first hearing of the proposed regulatory changes just this past meeting, July meeting. It will take at least 2 more meetings. There are waiting periods, and so I think it will probably be maybe 3 months before those final changes to the testing are approved. This is a process of transition. Dr. Rappelette has outlined. They have to find, they have hired a new vendor, new test vendor called New Meridian, which I checked online. They have executives that have come from all areas of the testing world. New Meridian is consulting with the DOE on test composition, test questions, test objectives, all of those things. So it's a process, and the governor has said that even though he said park would go away day 1, it's a little bit more complicated than day 1. So over the next year or 2, depending on the state board's actions, park will transition out of park to another test yet to be determined, the not park test.
And just a couple other items. Facility-wise, as you can imagine, summer's very busy. This summer seems to be an extreme case of how crazy we can get with all the projects. We are renovating the bathrooms, which we'll have a report on later on. We're working on the window projects. Every building seems to have taken on additional projects, which is terrific. That we're advancing, we're making improvements with our facilities. It's just the buildings are a little bit busier than they have been in the past. And then we're still continuing to do our general maintenance of general improvements, whether it's cleaning or painting classrooms and offices and so forth. So if you walk through any one of the 4 buildings at this time, they're a little dusty and dirty with all the construction work that's going on, but we're going to touch base on that during the retreat portion of the meeting. Technology-wise, I just want to give you an update. One of the things that Kathy Weisenberger has been pushing for a couple of years is to start an alumni network. We got some time during the summer to put one together, so about a couple of weeks ago it went live. So if you are alumni, we're going to start advertising a little bit more to get you up on, go to the website and just register your general information. And we're really looking to create a network for our current students who are looking to get an idea of different careers, some experiences, maybe some internships, but also if they have questions about colleges, which seems to be their big focus. It's just touch base with someone who's gone to those colleges and have a little bit more insight than what they would get through brochures, websites, or visits. And lastly, this is Peter's last Board of Ed meeting for 17 years. He's been here taking minutes, doing our finances, and it's going to be a big changeover. Our next candidate is Barbara Murphy's in the audience tonight. She's on the agenda to take Peter's spot, but I don't think there's anyone who's going to end up taking Peter's spot. That's it.
I think, yes, we owe a debt to Peter. It is amazing. BAs carry school districts on their shoulders, and we never have any money for anything in this district. It's a common complaint, but we never have any money. And even despite that, when we never have any money, if there's a catastrophe and we need to find money, Pete finds the money. It's probably hidden somewhere in his office, but Pete finds the money. Pete got us through 2010-2011 school year when we lost all our state aid and they had to remake the budget overnight. And we came through that. He has been with us at the most difficult times. He has been with us at the times of celebration. He's been with us through one major construction project. I see Bill in the audience smiling about that. I think he is bailing out before we finish this one, but we owe him a great debt, and we wish you good luck in South Carolina. We know that you will be an asset to whatever community that you live in, and we welcome Barbara, but we'll miss Pete. Okay. It is now time for the first public comment period for questions or comments on agenda items only. If you have a question or comment, please raise your hand and I'll let me know that you're a member of the Glen Ridge community, and then let us know what's on your mind. Questions or comments? Yes, Mrs. Silva.
These two new positions, which I think Karen mentioned at the last Board of Education meeting, were they posted somewhere, and if so, where?
Which positions are you referring to?
Well, the says new position, high school assistant principal, new position, middle school assistant principal.
As current administrators, it's just a reassignment.
Okay. And then also, somewhere I read, and the number may be exactly wrong, maybe not be exactly right, but our additional allotment from the state is what? Is it around 180,000? Does that sound right?
159.
Okay. And so I know that there was, Dr. Harris's old position. Obviously, there was funding for that, and the old role, now there's these two. So is part of the funding for these two people, part of it is presumably no salary, is part of the rest of it from the new funding from the state, or how does that work?
No,
budget-wise.
We budgeted for the two assistant principal positions in our original budget,
Okay.
which we finalized before we found out about the additional gift of state aid, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we have the finance committee report. But no, we've been trying. We used to have two assistant principals in the district until that disastrous 2010-2011 school year, when we had to eliminate positions all over the district, and that was one of them. We tried as hard as we could to eliminate anyone who was not a classroom teacher rather than touch the classrooms, and so that position was eliminated. We've been trying to get it back in, to squeeze it back in ever since. We finally were able to do so, but it was not in anticipation of this windfall.
Okay.
Because as you know, gifts from the state you can never be sure of, and then you can never be sure of them the second year. Right. Yes, I saw your hand up. Did you have a question?
I did have a question. So it was partially Karima Ravenel, by the way. She asked part of my question.
Okay.
I guess, you're introducing two changes at once. The new full-time principal for the high school, and then the switch with Liddy and Dr. Harris. And so I just want to caution you guys that if there's a disaster or things don't go exactly as planned, what's the problem? Is it the new principal, or is it the switch with Liddy and Harris? It's a little bit of a conundrum that you face, right?
Sure, and I think we appreciate that. I think it's something whenever good things and bad things always seem to come in clusters. Mm-hmm. And, Mr. Melcher leaving, that put us in this particular situation, and being able to finally have another assistant principal was an opportunity that we didn't want to pass up. So I think we take your point, and we're all going to be very, very cognizant of that. I know Mr. Phillips will be very vigilant about that as well. I think that the board does not play a role in hiring. The state has taken us out of that function, but we believe that good choices have been made, and now we take it forward. But thank you.
Why do you say the state has taken you out of
It
hiring?
used to be that board members could play a more substantial role in the hiring, particularly of administrators, not teachers so much, but administrators. Back in 2008, some legislation was passed that took board members out of that role. So now, the only thing that board members can really do when it comes to hiring, except for a superintendent, the board still hires the superintendent, but what board members can do relative to hiring is a small number of board members, that being one or two, can, at the discretion of the administration, sit in on, say, a final interview. Can't ask questions, but we can sit in and form impressions. So our role, whether we like that proposition or not, our role has been limited in what we can actually do. We still have the liability for those hires. We still have the opportunity to approve those hires upon the recommendation of the administrators, but we do not play a role beyond that.
Who does get to sit on the interview, whether it's an administrator or a teacher? Who gets to sit
Maybe you
in
can
those?
describe the process.
Sure.
If it's an administrator that we're hiring, such as the case, we just hired a new high school principal. First round interviews, it was myself and two other administrators who sat in on it. Second round, we actually brought in different groups to speak with them. We had a parent group, we had a student group, and we had them do some tasks. And the third round interview, it was myself and the two other central office administrators. And then the final interview, it was myself, board members, and the central office administrators.
When you say,
I'm
Parent
sorry,
group.
you need to,
I'm
just
sorry.
protocol-wise, just identify yourself first.
just,
N-
I'm sorry,
name-
Tamika Pierce.
Just name. I'm
I'm sorry, Tamika Pierce. Just a follow-up. So in terms of the parent group, it's just HSAs from one of the schools, or what is this parents group?
Well, yeah, it was some parents group that, high school parents. I had the homeschool president there, and then three other parents from different organizations.
Other questions or comments? Yes, Anthony.
I saw in the paper as well about the governor's wish to end park.
Yes.
And so I had a multi-pronged question. One is, what on the face of it was the determining factor to eliminate one park test and not another? Because it seems that from on the face of it, it seems haphazard, but I'm admittedly on the outside looking in. And the second question is, have you heard, and this is mostly for you, Betsy, any rumblings about potential replacements, any tests that the state is leaning toward or looking at, or so I'm just asking to get your skinny on that.
The process, the governor, when he was campaigning, as I mentioned, said he would do away with park on day one. And, but then I think he sat down with Dr. Raphael, who, as you know, is a seasoned educator, was the superintendent at Asbury Park before assuming the commissioner's job, and found out that there was no other test waiting in the wings. So therefore, the federal requirement is that you test in grades 3 through 8, and then once again in the high school. There is no federal requirement that any of those tests be a graduation requirement. So graduation requirements are a New Jersey affair. So the creation of park-related graduation requirements was a New Jersey decision made back, I think, in 2008. So what the commissioner did, which I think was a very measured approach, was he had a listening tour throughout the state. And he invited various groups to host these listening events. I know his Garden State Coalition hosted one with Dr. Raphael. And he listened to what parents, teachers, students sometimes had to say about the tests. And the one that we hosted was very interesting because it was a very thoughtful discussion from administrators, parents, high school students, superintendents, and they approached it very thoughtfully. So from that process, I think he did 70 different feedback events. He got an idea of what about Park people didn't like? Was it the test? Was it the rollout? Was it the loss of instructional time? All of those factors played in. He collated all of that and used it to formulate the recommendations that Mr. Phillips just described, the shortening of time, the reduction in the number of tests for graduation requirements, and that is only a first step, according to Dr. Replet. Further steps will be coming. Now they've contracted with this new Meridian group to help them come up with what the next test will be. The intelligence that I've heard in Trenton is that it will be Park-like, but not Park, in the way that Massachusetts has revised their testing. They were part of the original Park Consortium as well. They left the Park Consortium fairly early on and came up with their own test, which bears a resemblance to Park in that it's aligned with the Common Core, but it is sort of, it's got Massachusetts tweaks. So the thinking is that we may have a Park-like test with New Jersey tweaks. But the whole issue of graduation requirements and also the amount which Park counts in teacher evaluations and tested subjects, which is language arts and math, that's still up in the air. Commissioner Replet has said that he would like to reduce the amount that Park counts in teacher evaluations and tested subjects. So we're waiting to see what that reduction will be. Right now it's 30%. It was 10%. He may take it back down to 10%, but he has not told us that number yet. So the best wisdom on it is that they'll try to take, in terms of the questions and content, what was good about Park, subtract all the bad, and then add some things in according to what they have heard from stakeholders.
So the other part of my question was related to the elimination of the various tests that Superintendent Phillips mentioned. And I did.
Yeah, they ended up keeping the two high school tests that they kept are both graduation requirements that was for this past freshman year. Those students are required to pass Algebra 1 and English 10.
And that's a New Jersey requirement?
That's a New Jersey requirement. So those are the only two tests they kept at the high school level.
So we will hear more probably going into the fall and next year. I do note that New Meridian, the company that they have retained for help with the development of the new test, has also been retained by the remnants of the Park Consortium and also the Smarter Balance Consortium, which is the other sort of group of states that came together to try to formulate some kind of standardized test. So I think New Meridian is suddenly working for everybody, even though the groups are different. So it will be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah.
Does that mean that they only take the test in 10th grade, or do they still take the test in 9th?
They will only be taking the test when they are enrolled in Algebra 1 and when they are enrolled in English 10.
So if you do those in both of those in your freshman year, you're done after that.
You can't take English 9 in freshman year.
So you have sophomore.
Yes.
Other questions or comments? Okay, we have a few committee and liaison reports, this being the first and only meeting of the month. Many of us have not, our liaison organizations have not met, but let's hear, starting with Tim.
Yeah, so our Facility and Finance Committee met since our last meeting, and some of the items that we discussed was our recommendation to the full board for the use of the additional state funding that we received. With the concessions that we made in the budget in order to create the second assistant principal position, and with the unknowns associated with the future central operations, we thought the most prudent thing to do with the funding is not to put it into new spending items that would be reoccurring demand year over year, because the funding itself could disappear, next year, right? So, what we thought the best thing to do is to put it in a reserve account so that it doesn't get spent until there is a a decision, a use that we all agree, or there's an emergency that we need to, a capital emergency that we need to do. So if you look at item P8 in your, or B8 in your agenda, you'll see that we're recommending it go into a capital reserve account and not get spent.
Immediately.
Immediately. The next item was one, and just to make sure that that the public is aware, the windows project at Forest Avenue is expected to continue on into the school year, and that was discussed and considered with the tight manufacturing timeline that we had. We knew that that was a potential reality, and so we wanted to make sure that the public knew that the expectation is that that would continue to occur off hours at that school under safe conditions that we have, even members of this board have executed a previous construction project. So as we get closer to the start of the school year, we can discuss what the protocols of that will be in more detail. We also discussed the current situation with the tenant in the central school building through direct discussions between the tenant and Wells Fargo. The tenant has agreed to rescind their filing for a request of reconsideration of the judge's ruling around our condemnation of the property. So that means we think that this is resolved.
Yeah.
Now what we're really doing is just how we have to finish negotiating with the tenant as it relates to the rent that they're paying us over the time that they're there, and the relocation expenses when they depart November 1st. So that's just an ongoing discussion. Lastly, I just want to personally say that I've worked with Peter for almost 10 years now, and I do have a lot of respect for him. I think that he personally has taken great care of this district to protect its interests, and I think the audit history every year that I've been on the board demonstrates that. And so, Peter, I just want to say thank you. It's been a pleasure working with you, buddy. Good luck. That concludes the report.
Okay. Ally, anything time sensitive?
Nothing tonight.
Okay. Dave?
Personnel and Policy Committee met a little less than 2 weeks ago. The agenda consisted of our ongoing discussion about attracting diverse candidates for positions in the district, the variety of open positions, then open positions, which we're closing tonight. We talked about specific ones. We talked about our board goal for the Personnel and Policy Committee meeting, and we teed up some policy discussions for the fall.
Okay. And the Bridgewood Avenue Homewood School did not meet for obvious reasons. Paul, anything to report?
No, nothing.
Okay. Tracy? Ally?
Nothing tonight.
Heather? Michael?
Yeah, the curriculum committee met a few days ago. And we discussed, we actually had a very long agenda that actually missed part of it, but we talked about reviewing the criteria for acceptance in the Gifted and Talented program, which is being reviewed currently. We talked about, the high school principal talked to us about option 2, which is a program that we are looking at, just really beginning to consider approaches for sort of alternate means of getting credit at high school levels. It's sort of very beginning sections that we're looking at right now, but it's something we're going to be looking at very carefully. We also consider our board goal. We also got an update that we are here again today about park testing, and we got some preliminary results from the AP test that we're taking.
We have another public comment coming up. We sort of group them together. So I'm calling you first. Okay. So we have some items before that. We have some administrative and other items to go through first. Tim, would you move the administrative items?
Yes, I move A1 through A3.
May I have a second?
Second.
Second from Michael. Board members, any questions or comments on administrative items before we vote? Okay, Peter, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Campbell?
Aye.
Mr. Galoo?
Aye.
Ms. Hilbert?
Aye.
Mr. Keppel?
Aye.
Ms. Lang?
Aye.
Mr. Romano?
Aye.
Ms. St. Aubern?
Aye.
Dr. Yaros Ramos? Ms. Ginsburg?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, David, would you move the personnel
I
items?
move P1 as continued on the addendum through P14.
Okay. May I have a second? Second. Second from Ally. In keeping with our confidentiality rules, personnel-related matters are discussed in exec session. If no one on the board has any objections, we'll go ahead with the vote. Pete, when you're ready.
Mr. Campbell?
Aye.
Mr. Galoo?
Aye.
Ms. Hilbert?
Aye.
Mr. Keppel?
Aye.
Ms. Lang?
Aye.
Mr. Romano?
Aye.
Ms. St. Aubern?
Aye.
Dr. Yaros Ramos? Ms. Ginsburg?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. Before we move the curriculum items, I would draw your attention to C1B, which was the Glen Ridge High School Engineering and Calculus students to participate in Engineering Manufacturing Day being held at Sandvik in Fairlawn on Friday, October 5th. At the state level, there's been a great deal of conversation about the ways that we expose our kids to different career fields. Engineering, logistics, various fields where jobs are going wanting in this state because there just aren't enough qualified candidates. And so I'm very pleased to see that our students are getting the opportunity to go over to Sandvik and look and see what's going on there. So with that, I ask you, Michael, will you move the
I
curriculum?
will move them, I will agree. This one I don't move. I move C1 and C2.
Okay, may I have a second? Second. Second from Heather. Any discussion on that item or the other curriculum items? I think the school bus evacuation drill report is sort of in keeping with the renewed focus on school bus safety that is going on both at the state level and the local level. All right, Pete, would you call the roll?
Mr. Campbell?
Aye.
Mr. Galoo?
Aye.
Ms. Hilbert?
Aye.
Mr. Keppel?
Aye.
Ms. Lang?
Aye.
Mr. Romano?
Aye.
Ms. St. Aubern?
Aye.
Dr. Yaros Ramos? Ms. Ginsburg?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Before we move to business items, I'd like to draw your attention to item B3, which is donations. We have two tonight. We accept with thanks the generous donation from the Glen Ridge High School Home and School Association of 4 cafeteria tables with benches for a total cost of $5,900, including shipping. And then upon the recommendation of the superintendent, we also accept the generous donation from the Glen Ridge Executive Home and School Council, GR Benefits, for furniture and sound lighting boards for improvements to the Raz Auditorium for a total cost of $8,600, including installation. I know those were much needed. So thank you to the Executive Council as well as to the high school home and school. And now, Tim, would you move business items?
Yes, I move the revised B1 through B10, many of which could be found on Addendum 1 and Addendum 2.
And there'll be a revised, B7 will be changed from capital surplus to capital
Capital
reserve.
Reserve. Okay,
Second.
second by Paul. Any discussion on these items? Discussion? Okay, Peter?
Mr. Campbell?
Aye.
Mr. Galoo?
Aye.
Ms. Hilbert?
Aye.
Mr. Keppel?
Aye.
Ms. Lang?
Aye.
Mr. Romano?
Aye.
Ms. St. Aubern?
Aye.
Dr. Yaros Ramos? Ms. Ginsburg?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Now we've come to the second public comment period, and you may go first.
Thank you. I had just a follow-up in terms of curriculum. Everyday math curriculum that is, I'm not sure if it's administered at the high school, but I have kids, it's not. So it's administered in the elementary school up to grade 5. And this is just because I need a little bit more education on it. Is it expected to be core and only, or core and supplemental to something else? Because I'm a little concerned about everyday math curriculum for elementary, and in terms of if it will be able to get them ready for high school. And when I've spoken to a lot of, should not say a lot of, but when I've spoken to teachers and principal about it, I'm not necessarily sure that it is expected to get them ready for high school level math. Based on my experience, I don't see how it can, so I just want a better clarification. Is it expected to be core and only, or core and something else supplementing it?
Well, Dirk can speak a little bit more to it than I can, but we review the math curriculum periodically. I think that overall, my understanding is that the high school math teachers are relatively pleased with the way the kids are coming from, for the most part. I think that last time I think we approved, last time that everyday math was chosen, it was sort of in the middle of the, oh my God, we have to do all of this testing and we have to get it. So I think that in the next review of it, I think we will probably be taking a harder look at it. There were other math programs that were reviewed, some of which required such an immense overhead and retraining the teachers that we just didn't have the budget available to do it. I do think that the next time math review, we'll have to look at it.
When is the next time?
Well, we're fortunate that Mr. Phillips is a former math teacher too, so maybe you could speak to that.
Yeah, we have to remember, whenever we're talking about textbooks, we're talking about a program and not our curriculum. Our curriculum is what our teachers write, what needs to be taught based on state and national standards. Our program helps assist us in teaching to those standards. So to answer your question, it is a core program that we use. It's not the only program, nor is any textbook company that we use, whether it's English, social studies, or science. That's a tool for us to teach the curriculum. We review content areas every 5 years. So math was probably done, I think, 3 years, 3 years ago. So in another couple of years, they'll be back up. We've had everyday math program here many years, and it's not necessarily we're not looking at other programs. We've brought every time we review the curriculum, we bring in textbook companies, we review them thoroughly. The teachers are really the main component of that review process, and they're the ones who, when you said that the teachers didn't think so, I'm surprised to hear that, because they're the ones who, in the end, are really, it's their recommendation that we're acting on moving forward with programs. When you look at our math scores, our standardized math scores at Park, and as they go up to the high school, our district does very well, way above state level, and when you start comparing them to districts in the same social economic categories as us, we're still performing higher than those similar districts. So, if you're asking me, does it prepare them? I'd say yes, based on those standardized scores and based on seeing what our students are doing at the high school level.
Well, in conjunction with the rest of the curriculum. Could everyday math prepare them alone? No. In conjunction with the rest of the curriculum.
If I recall, the math consultant had come in, also recommended a program for more explain the process of math that they have to do on the standardized test now. She thought that was a good fit for that reason.
You mean the everyday math?
Yeah.
And we did have, for several years, we've had an outside consultant come in to work with our teachers more on the teaching of math, not so much just the content or the program, but the teaching. And the teachers have responded very, very well to that. And I should say that, Chicago Math, Everyday Math, has had many, many iterations now, and each one has had some modifications. When parents have come to us with concerns about Everyday Math, it's usually they feel that because everyday math has that spiraling aspect where you introduce a concept and then you go away from it and come back to it, and some children have more difficulty with that than others. Some parents have not been comfortable. They felt like there needed to be more repetition of the basics, more drilling, and I think we've got some supplemental materials to help with that. And I think some parents have also had a concern about the emphasis on estimating. Because I remember saying this myself when my daughter was in everyday math, that if you know how to do math, you can estimate, whereas I think a lot of people felt that the estimating shouldn't come first. So I think we have been aware over the years of the kind of specific feedback that parents have brought to us on the math, and at the times when we review the curriculum, which, as Mr. Phillips said, is coming up before very long, we've brought that to the attention of the administration and the committees. So no, it's an ongoing process. Math is always about process, and curriculum is always about process. So thank you. Other questions or comments? Mrs. Sauer.
Questions. You mentioned it in the last meeting, and it kind of got alluded to in this meeting, but has there been a general announcement to the public that the opening of the central school is delayed here? I mean, it's obvious at this point, but I'm not sure.
I think that we have said now for many, many months that it would be September 2019. And that's still where we're going. Even though we are still in the process of working with the current tenant, we'll also be starting demolition, which the two are not mutually exclusive. So no, there has been no further delay. We have our professionals here tonight to assure us that there will be no further delay. I think that whenever we have made statements about it for many, many months, we've said September 2019. So fingers crossed that we don't have apocalyptic weather, that all things align, and we're on track.
But you know, I think to your point, as we get closer to the school year, I think the communications committee needs to meet. And I think we need to get something on the website, which I think is where most people get most of their information these days, that highlights that and that gives construction updates. What was done over the summer, I think, is a good start, and then how things are going to operate through the school year. Because we've talked about this internally and at communications committee meetings and at finance and facilities committee meetings, and that is that however the project is managed, if it's not communicated well, it's going to be a failure in some part. So I think your point is taken that there hasn't been much change on our website as regards construction or the Open Web Central in the last 3 months. But we're going to do that by September.
And it's on that, we have attached to our draft goals, there's a list of action items, and that's, the updates are on the list of action items.
Yeah, I think to answer your question, I don't think there'll be any surprises on it, but I think it needs to contain the information.
And then one other question
Sure.
was, I could have sworn, I thought I heard Mr. Phillips say at the last meeting he was going to talk about HIV further in this meeting. I couldn't quite understand why he said that. You weren't planning to? I know you
Not that I recall.
okay.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, so I think there was a summary about diversity from Mr. Campbell, and you said that you're going to meet later this year. When you did your summary, when you did your committee summary on diversity.
Just now?
Yes.
I was really reporting. I'm sorry, go ahead with your question.
So you had mentioned that you're going to, I guess, reconvene on diversity hiring within the school district.
Yeah, if you haven't been in our last couple of
Yeah,
meetings,
yeah,
all I was doing today was reporting on
The most
just
recent
as Tim reported on his most recent Finance and Facilities Committee meeting, I was just reporting on what the agenda was for our most recent Personnel and Policy Committee meeting. It was on the agenda and it was discussed, and as we've told some of the people that have been at prior meetings, and as is one of the goals of that committee, we are going to keep that on the agenda for the indefinite future, and we are going to continue to monitor the progress of the district and try to, in working with other school districts and leveraging other tools, we're gonna keep it on, as I've said before, the front burner, so that we make sure as a district we are continuing to focus on attracting diverse candidates for open positions within the district. That's really, now, you haven't heard all the numbers. I think it's more of continue to attract, because based on our numbers, we have not quite as severe a problem as the rest of the districts in the state or the states in the country have, but it's not something we're going to bring up every 3 years and then forget about it in 3 years. So what I meant to say is, it is going to be an agenda item on at our next committee meeting, Personnel and Policy Committee meeting, and then the next one after that, and the next one after that, so.
So I take it that the board is very serious about it, but in terms of just measurable success, exactly what do you think you're going to be doing differently going forward versus what you've done this year or the year before, whenever there was open positions? Like, exactly what are you going to be doing different?
I think that, Mr. Phillips, you can speak to things that you've already started to do, yes?
Yeah, we've tried to form more relationships with more colleges. Before, we've been really dealing with 2 or 3 colleges, local colleges, Caldwell University, Montclair State, once in a while Seton Hall. So we've reached out to more colleges to get a more diverse population, and we're trying to form relationships with them for one. We're going to start posting on, most of them have job blogs, postings. So we'll start to send when we do have openings for teaching positions, we're sending it to those colleges. We're also trying to form relationships to bring in more student teachers. We find that when we do have a quality student teacher, they're most likely to get the job if there's an opening, just because we have experience with them. We know if they're strong in the classroom or not, and they're familiar with the school system. And we've started to expand where we're advertising our positions also.
And there are ways to measure success in this area. We took just basically a look at the last 3 years, but that's actual hires, not so much candidates. But one of the systems that we do use to receive applications does show us during the process and after the fact the profiles of the people that applied for the position.
Yeah.
So diversity is not so much a numbers game.
I agree.
But there are sort of more quantifiable ways to track your progress, and we're going to continue to look at that as well.
And just out of curiosity, what were some of the difficulties the board faced, I guess, over the last 3 years? Because I'm pretty sure, and the reason why I'm going over and over this point is I'm pretty confident you guys have, this concern was raised and you guys are actively trying to address it. So I'm just trying to get a better sense of what exactly were some of the issues that you found when you're trying to attract diverse population. What were some of the issues you were facing?
I think, and I circulated an article from Education Week to the board, which looks, big picture nationwide.
Mm-hmm.
And attracting, every school district is trying to do the same thing, attract a larger pool a more diverse pool of qualified candidates. Some of the obstacles that we face is that some districts can give financial incentives, which, as I said before, we never have any money. We still don't have any money. They can provide things like housing, relocation help, things like that that really make it easier for students, qualified candidates who want to relocate. And when you're trying to reach outside your geographic area particularly, that's a factor. And so we talked about a little bit about, we know what we don't have, which is money. But what we do have is, that we have to publicize more, is good working conditions, stability in the district, things like that. That as we go forward, we're hoping that by publicizing those things, we can make ourselves more attractive and sort of counteract the effect of not being able to offer any other kinds of inducements.
And we've gone over this before, but I absolutely don't mind going over it again because we're going to continue to talk about it. So one of the strategies that Dirk talked about is the student-teacher route, where you are trying to attract diverse candidates at sort of the lowest pay level and the lowest experience level, because that's where financial incentives are least likely to attract a candidate. These are people that are entering the workforce as teachers not to make $1 million versus tenured teachers who are sort of being bid after and attracted by money. And again, the hope is that by getting people into the district at that level, where we probably have our best chance of attracting diverse candidates, and they learn more about the district and they learn more about the, our constituents and the students, and they're in a successful district, and our fantastic administrators, they'll want to stay. Then you run the risk of them being attracted by money elsewhere, but you can only do what you can do in that regard, and then now you're competing for an incumbent, which I think puts you in a better position than having to go out and sell someone on the district when you're not paying them the same kind of money another district might be. So that kind of drove that strategy. That strategy also came, I think, from your consultations with people outside the district.
And I think as a negotiations committee, when we worked on the salary guide, which regulates all the teacher salaries, we've tried to put more money in at the lower levels of the guide so that we could attract newly qualified teachers with better salaries. Our salaries overall are not the highest in the county, they're not the lowest in the county either, so we're somewhere in the middle. But we did try to work on the guide, and we're going to continue to do that. 2019 is when we go into the teachers, the negotiation cycle with our faculty again. We will try, it is Heather Yaros' Ramos' great goal is to improve the salary guide to a greater extent, and that includes putting more money in at the levels where we're attracting young teachers. I think you were first, and then Mrs. Sauer.
Karima Ravenel again. The only thing about the student-teacher route is that you're very likely to attract still local people. So people from Caldwell College, Montclair State, the same people who are already in the district and who may have already gone through that route. And you're more likely to be successful getting different kinds of candidates if you are more aggressive, not at the student-teacher route, but just even like 2 to 3 years out. Maybe someone has been working at one kind of place in Newark, for example. Maybe they started out in Newark 2 to 3 years, and they don't mind taking a salary cut if that is the case. But I think multiple modes of, we just need to do it from different levels. I get the student-teacher route, but you're going to get the same kind of teacher. And while there's nothing wrong with that, we're all looking for diversity in regards to, I talked to you a little bit about this, Betsy, race and ethnicity, yes, but we need some diversity of thought. We don't want everyone to come from Montclair State. I want my kids to be taught by people who are from Teachers College and NYU and University of Colorado. And so we do need to be a little bit more aggressive when it comes, and we had a huge number of positions filled this past spring and over the summer. So it looks like we'll have to wait another couple years till people either retire or relocate or maternity leave or something. But we've got to be very proactive about doing it at multiple levels at the same time.
Yeah, it's a strategy,
yes.
The student-teacher, not the strategy.
Yes.
And you're absolutely right. You hit the nail on the head in terms of the value of diversity in the education context, and that is the diversity of
yes.
experience and thought that our children can be exposed to.
Yes.
Mrs. Sauer.
Yeah, just to follow up a little bit, we talked about this when you mentioned that article before. I just don't understand the argument that, well, we can't offer like relocation benefits, because I can understand a district that's in, a remote area of some part of the country but we're in the center of one of the largest melting pots in the country. We have many other things to attract, and I mentioned to you, I'm in the Newark schools all the time because of CASA, and there's many things that could attract some very qualified teachers, either from there, certainly Montclair seems to do it, or at the student teacher level. And we talked before about, not doing the same thing, because it doesn't work as well as you want. But that, I just don't buy the relocation business, because a lot of teachers want to stay in their geographic area, and we're blessed to have a highly diverse geographic area.
We are, and you've mentioned Newark teachers on occasion, and there are some very fine teachers in Newark. Newark does provide housing sometimes. They do, their salary scale is much higher than ours. And so it is hard for us, we just do not have the funds for that. But as all of you have said, there are creative approaches that don't take money, or take less money. And this is an ongoing process. This is not something you solve overnight. And I would also say, too, the number of openings as a district, in terms of our average demographics, our average age, we do skew a little older. So I think that we will be seeing over time, over the next couple of years, more retirements, an increased number of retirements, and also mobility. Teachers are more mobile than they used to be, in terms of wanting to find something near where they live. We frequently lose teachers because they're commuting an hour to get here, and they want to commute 15 minutes to get somewhere else. And so I think the opportunities, this is not the end of opportunity. And that's what we have to understand, is this is a process. If there were instant fixes, someone else, God help, that would have thought of it already, but it's a process, and it differs from district to district. So keep the suggestions coming, because we are committed to trying to implement as many of them as we can. Yes?
Sorry, so you had a counterpoint to Newark, but what about Montclair? I'm always curious, right? How come Montclair does it? Is it because they're paying more in Montclair?
No.
We don't pay more than Montclair. I think that we probably, I'm trying to envision the county scale, I think we probably pay a little bit less. Plus Montclair has more openings than we do, just because they're a larger system. And likewise with South Orange Maplewood, which demographically is very compatible with Montclair, they have many more openings each year. And so I think that that's a factor as well. So, and I've heard, I have several friends who are on the Montclair Board of Education, and one of their goals is increasing diversity among their faculty too. And likewise with South Orange Maplewood, they really have struggled with that whole issue there, and are still struggling with it. So it is something that requires a lot of thought and sort of continued application.
So I think Mr. Campbell's comment, I think we just want to make sure it's front and center, and we're not staring down another year where something isn't done about it, because it is, to be honest, as a parent of 3 kids in this district, a huge concern.
Sure.
And not just because of my children in particular. I feel like, as Karima said and you reiterated before, it's not just diversity in terms of ethnicity, but it's also diversity in terms of thought. It's hugely, it has a big impact on my 3 kids in particular, because they are an ethnic minority in this community, and the people who they look up to most are their teachers, and it would be good for that to be reflected in them as well. And on the flip side, we know our children are growing up in a borderless global community, and as such, that's why it's also important, not just for my kids, but for all kids.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, and I don't want to sit here with Dirk sitting silent and make it sound like it is a real problem that over the last 3 years, the record is not good.
Yeah.
Over the last 3 years, which is really Dirk's measurable as a superintendent, the percentage of diverse candidates relative to all of our hires has actually been very good, very outsized compared to any statistic that you give in terms of our population, the national population, the state population. Of the hires during the last 3 years, our percentage of diverse candidates is in the
Mid-20s.
mid-20s, which is pretty exceptional. That's not a way to pack it away and say we're good, but it was really refreshing to hear it, and that's why I say what we're going to do is continue to move in the right direction, because I think Dirk has got it going in the right direction.
And to be fair, we recognize that this is not just a Glenwood problem. This is, companies are struggling with it. I know my company is. So as long as it's front and center, that's all we ask.
Yeah.
And I think this board and certainly this administration, there's a willingness to listen to different ideas, take suggestions, see if they work. Anything anyone has to offer us, we'll try it, see if it works, unless it's illegal. So I would say that anybody with suggestions should feel free to send them along, and we'll just keep working on it, and keep reporting on it. So thank you. Yes.
I do have a question. Well, I have two, but I also wanted to add, since we're on this topic, I was curious because I'm not familiar and I haven't seen, my child has been in the district for 4 years, but I was wondering the number of teachers that are African American. If you could, and I'm not sure if anybody at the table would be able to present that number. I'm just curious, only because I haven't seen at the two elementary schools, of course. Now, there could be one, and I know Ms. Booknight.
Yes,
Ms. Booknight just retired, so they did a little ceremony there. So I was present for that, but I was just wondering currently how many teachers
You had those numbers.
or principals as well.
I the numbers of minority teachers that were hired in the last 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you the committee is not focused on any particular ethnic minority.
Right.
In
I
terms of the
know you're not.
numbers.
I'm
Yeah.
just curious.
Just in terms of our preparation with numbers like that at this moment, we haven't parsed it by ethnic minority. We also haven't parsed it by job position. That we've studied, but,
We've looked at certified staff compared to non-certified staff. Certified staff would be teachers, administration, counselors, nurses. That non-certified would be aides, custodial.
So all the teachers are certified?
Correct.
Right.
Okay. All right, and now I have a couple of questions in terms of, and I believe I said my name was Marilyn Crawford. Can you explain to me what your policy is in terms of incoming third graders here at Ridgewood? How that breakdown of students to teacher, classroom? Is it random? Is there some kind of strategy to do you have a method in terms of how that works? And then the next question I have is regarding the numbers. I noticed like on the student's desk, from one year to the next, there's a number that seems to be associated with each student. What does that number signify? It's usually on their desk. I know certainly at...
Yeah, typically if some teachers have a number system where they're randomly pair out, they might pick 2 sticks out of a popsicle sticks that have the numbers on and say, 2 and 13, your partners, 4 and 18, your partners. So if there's numbers, it's usually having to do with group work or partner work in the classroom. That's the only reason why I can see there'd be numbers on the student's name tag on the desk.
Yeah, no, these numbers have been with them that I've noticed for the past couple of years.
Usually it's just alphabetically, like my kid's number was usually 19.
Yeah.
It changed.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering what it was.
That's
And then,
Little cubbies have numbers.
Yeah, I think it is by, from my experience, alphabetical order as well.
okay.
Yeah, so instead of calling John and Paul, they give numbers. So,
It's really teacher by teacher, like it's
Yes,
really
yeah.
wide, but yeah, the teachers just assigned.
The school's not assigning it.
in the policy, the other question regarding the breakdown.
Oh, when it comes to
incoming-
placement, the teachers get together and, they're looking at the total makeup of the classroom, so they're looking at, dividing boys and girls equally, different levels. They're trying to make a very diverse classroom where, it's, you don't want a classroom where the majority of the students are male and and there's only a handful of female students and so forth. So they get together, second grade teachers, and they will break up the kids, and sometimes, you know, there's social issues that they're separating students. Sometimes there's social issues where a student needs one of their friends in the classroom. So those are things that they all take into consideration. So like if you're down at Forest Avenue School, the Forest Avenue second grade teachers are making 6 sections for the 6 sections in 3rd grade and placing those kids a little bit randomly. They don't know who the teacher is. They're making the classrooms diverse. And then the Linden Avenue is doing the same, and then they put those groups of kids together, and then they're assigned a teacher here at Regional.
Does that answer?
Yes, it does,
Oh.
but I do have another question.
Yes,
In
I'm
reference
sorry.
to that.
Oh, diversity should also be male, female as well.
Yep.
Okay, other questions or comments?
What's the flexibility in terms of the placement? The children have already been assigned to teachers for the fall. Is there any flexibility in, like, you know, a child going to a particular teacher? I know sometimes, like it was just mentioned, that sometimes they may be paired with a kid, another student they may be familiar with, or is there any flexibility with, like, okay, if they already have an assignment, can they go to a different teacher? And what's the policy around that?
Once the students are assigned, we don't change teachers unless there's been extreme social interaction between students that we have to separate them. Once assignments are made,
Is that a policy?
it's a practice.
Okay, it's a practice. So in terms of it being a practice, then the policy can be, is there some way that if I as a parent had a question and I wanted my child perhaps to be placed with another teacher, since it's just a practice, then there is some flexibility with that? Is there a possibility then?
We're not going to place, we don't take teacher recommendations. We can't open up that box. Parent recommendation. So if you're asking to be placed with a certain teacher, we don't do that.
Okay, other questions or comments? All right, that being the case, this is the one time of the year when we don't adjourn and leave the building. This is the time of year when we have our annual board retreat, which is part of the public meeting. So this year our board retreat is going to be devoted to a discussion of our capital projects. Our professionals are here. Those of you who would like to stay are welcome to do so. Those of you who would prefer not to hear about bathrooms, floors, and other things of that nature may also leave. So it is completely up to you. But our professionals are here to give a presentation on this. So would you all introduce yourselves?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. Pat Seibel, Design Resources Group Architects. Always good to be in Glen Ridge. Tonight with me, Phil Picosa from my office, Jessica Grace, and from Epic Construction Management, Kathy Fartaglia. I have some, are we going to be?
You know, I'm going to quickly go over my PowerPoint.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
A lot of facility work during the summer, obviously, for obvious reasons. We don't have children in the building, we need a little bit more construction. But I just wanted the board and the public to be aware of some of the things that are going on this summer. Some we're doing in-house, and some of it we have paid vendors to come in and do for us. There we go. So at Linden Avenue School, Mr. Caravella, I had to point this out, finally painted those mustard-colored walls. So he has new wall. He's out redecorating his office a little bit. So you Linden Avenue parents will be good. Those first couple of days, stop by and say hi to him and tell him how great his office looks. We're also redoing the front steps at Linden Avenue. That's part of a drainage issue we're having a little bit. We're getting some water coming in that we think is part due to the front steps, so that will be happening later on this summer. And the teacher's room is being redone, and that's thanks to the home school. They tore down a half wall there. They really have a great design, so new fixtures, some new appliances, new color scheme. Gray Owl is the color of choice right now at Lynn Avenue School. Yes, it is the popular, it's going up all over. They might have to change from the lions to the owls, just so you know. Forest Avenue School, we had window wells put in, and part of, again, drainage issues. Over the years, that's where the learning garden is, just between the mulch and it started covering the windows a little bit, so you can understand why it was an issue. So the window wells have been put in around the building for those basement level windows. That's the new playground. It's going to be hopefully installed in the next week or two, but the delivery was made. Mr. Murphy also got his office redone. If you had been in there before, it was just very outdated. Had 100 different wires coming from the conduits coming from the wall from all the different data lines throughout the year, so we started removing things and so forth. And we gave him a little bit more privacy. We moved him in the back, and we're going to install a door so meetings can be held in the conference space of his office. Ridgewood Avenue, we're converting the second floor computer lab into a classroom. Eventually, we're going to make that 2 classrooms, 2 small group instructions. There's 2 doors there that have access, so it'll be an easy maneuver. When we change over the HVAC, we'll be putting 2 different units to make that easier. Lockers are coming. They've been installed the 30th, I believe, on the 2nd floor. So there are new lockers happening. In the 6th grade, Mrs. Marinaro's classroom, we split that to make it a small group instruction classroom. And the boys' bathroom in the basement, this is part of our bathroom project. We've also made that, so if you've ever been in the basement bathrooms here, they're huge. We're able to split that to make it a office/classroom space for us. So we're creating a lot of space by taking some of these extremely large educational spaces or bathrooms and splitting them. At the high school, we had air conditioning installed in the chorus room, and that was thanks to a donation by the music and art campus there. The home school at the high school is redoing the teacher's cafeteria. That's not done yet. It's the old cafeteria, so they'll be working on that later this summer. And we're, if you've walked up that walkway from the high school, all those railroad ties are starting to come out, and they need to be replaced, so they'll be replaced later this summer. So we have a lot going on besides all the construction that DRG and EPIC will be talking about tonight. I just want to give you guys an idea of what was happening this summer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew, can you please put up the other one?
Yes.
And I'll hand over
Thank you.
the remote to you.
Weren't you also doing the bathrooms up by the auditorium? Or
Yeah, he'll talk about that.
Oh, okay.
That's part of the referendum, so that's his job. We are doing those. We're just waiting for the gas lamp. They're having production this weekend, and we're starting those bathrooms.
Are we getting the print? Are you handing stuff out?
I brought enough for the, I didn't bring enough for the entire public. I think there's something for the board.
You know, we're going to post this on our webpage. I'll have it up by the end of the week.
And maybe if one of us could share, and then a couple of copies could go out in the audience.
Okay, referendum projects, some of the smaller ones that we've already taken care of. We had, as one of the projects within the district was a drainage issue at the Linden Avenue School. It turned out with this particular project, we didn't have a lot of historical information on the, we didn't have a lot of historical information on the site and civil components of the site. So what we did was we hired a plumber to come in and scope the entire system, the entire storm system. And it turns out we were able to find 2 clogs. We pulled out the boulders and debris out of the 2 clogs. And instead of digging up the entire site and trying to install all kind of drainage, we saved the district some $75,000. through the storms that we've had since we've unclogged it last year around this time. The water hasn't found its way back into the building, so we believe we solved that issue there. To Tim's point, the Forest Avenue windows are on their way. Up top there, you can see the budget line versus the base bid. We were about $5,000 over on this one, but some soft costs from below the line was able to take care of that. So you can look forward to some new windows. These are some of the existing conditions that we're going to be taking care of for you end of August and into September. And once again, and it's nothing we haven't done before, the contractor is going to be coming in second shift to pull these windows out, and he'll basically hopscotch from classroom to classroom, and the teachers will come back, and the classroom will be, program ready when they come in the next morning. Toilet rehabilitation, I'll let Phil's going to talk a little bit about. He's handling the construction administration of Salazar. This is really just a bullet line, once again, budget versus base bid. We came in, the delta number up top there, $48,000 less than what we originally projected, so we're doing pretty good on budget for this one. Phil, you want to talk a little bit about Salazar and how they're executing?
Yeah, sure. So we've been working with Salazar now for, I think we're on week 10. So we're up to, Jess? We're up to week 10. They have completed all the demo and all of the bathrooms except for the ones that we had to keep active for the programs that are going on here at Ridgewood. But all that demo is done. They've done all their rough-in. They've got all their rough-in inspections. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, before you're allowed to close the walls, the inspectors come and check all the wiring, all the piping, and everything inside the walls. That's called your rough-in. Once you have that, you can close the walls and start putting up your tiling. And I think we've got a picture over at Forest where we actually have tile going up. There it is, right in the center. That's brand new tile that's already up. The photos don't really do it justice. We noticed as we walked around tonight that Salazar's got some of the tiling started here in Ridgewood, and we noticed that in every one of the bathrooms, every one of the toilet rooms, the tile's already there, the material is there, which if you know anything about our industry, when it comes to tiling, usually the hardest part is actually getting the tile here. So the tile's here, it's ready to go. Salazar's been on top of their game for this entire project. They're doing a great job. So.
And H&S, this is once again bid versus budget. This one came in very well. Total savings here so far of $238. There are some change orders that are coming down the line. There were some unforeseen conditions, and we are evaluating those right now. Nothing to the magnitude of that number, obviously, but there will be some changes on the project. But you can see we did very well on the budget. This is for the high school and Linden Avenue.
So at the high school, we've got a bunch of small bathrooms. We have 2 or 3 larger gang bathrooms. Actually, there's 4 gang bathrooms, and then there's a bunch of individual bathrooms that are being done as well. The scope of these projects not as great as they are in the outer schools. There's not a lot of wall reconstruction or anything like that. It's basically just taking the old fixtures out, getting the new fixtures in at the new ADA heights, trying to put accessible fixtures in wherever we can. One of the change orders that you probably have already seen is in the gang bathroom. If you look all the way to the right, go back to that for a second. Look all the way to the right, the big red blob there down in the basement of Linden. That wall that's in between there, when we originally looked at that wall, it was a sheetrock wall in the boys' room and a sheetrock wall on the girls' room. And H&S went in and they took the sheetrock walls down, and there was a cinder block wall in between. So somebody built a sheetrock wall on either side of this cinder block wall. So clearly they never had it in their budget or their bid to take that cinder block wall down. We didn't even know it was there until they took the wall down. So that was a change order to take that down. But we convinced them that they could get it down in 1 day when they thought they would take them 2. So we cut their change order in half. They weren't happy about it, but they accepted it. Again, in the high schools, you'll see, basically, these are existing cinder block walls. The only place where a wall's been opened up is where what we call the carrier, it's the thing that the fixture sits on, the toilet sits on, has to be changed for ADA height requirements. But everything else, basically, is take the old one off and put the new one on and clean up the walls. And these are epoxy floor shows?
Yes.
So we're going to be putting, we're not even going to change the floor tile in here. This is going to get an epoxy floor coating over the top of it. These are, okay, the picture in the upper right is when they took those urinals off, you can see the wall behind it was not really adequate for supporting it. So the contractor's going ahead and putting a new stud wall in front of the existing wall, and then going to hang the new fixtures off of that new stud wall. And then we have the faculty bathroom up on the second floor, which you can't really see, but that blue, where that faculty bathroom is, that's paneling that someone painted. So they tried to make it look nice as best they could. So that's all getting ripped out, and we're putting new walls up in front of that, new floors and new fixtures.
So this is a summary, like I said, of the bid versus the budget, and you know, we're in the black here, almost $300,000 that can be used as contingency for some of the other projects, HVAC or the central school, as the design grows and evolves there. And moving on to the central school, Jess, you want to talk a little bit about
Sure.
the
So
layout, what we're looking at here?
yeah, so for the central school, we're going to have a pre-K through second grade. Basically 2 classrooms per grade. This is the ground floor, so this is when you're entering in from Hillside Ave. So that's the parking lot, which was originally the Wells Fargo. So this map is broken down by classrooms are in yellow, specialty spaces, so your multipurpose rooms or SGI spaces, those are in green, and then anything administrative is in blue. Anything in white is just circulation and grossing space, so your toilet rooms, your storage, any miscellaneous areas. So to the far left, that is the kindergarten classrooms. So each kindergarten and pre-K on the ground floor, they have direct access to what will be a playground where it is the circulation area of the existing Wells Fargo ATM space. Those classrooms also have their individual storage rooms and individual toilet rooms. You also have access into the main administrative area with a security vestibule. So parents, they can enter in the vestibule and they will not be allowed to go through unless they present their license or sign in. Then you can go to the next plan. So then going up another floor, this is the first floor. This is the first grade and second grade. So you have 2 large classrooms. They're about, combined with the storage, 950 square feet. Each one has a large storage room in the back as well as a sink. But something else I forgot to mention, those bathrooms downstairs, they also had individual sink areas outside the toilet rooms for cleanup space.
Sorry, Jess, so in this, when you're building, are you doing for the pre-K and kindergarten, does it include bathroom within the classroom?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, they have their own individual, but each floor also has their own game toilet room.
Got it.
So back on the first floor, the first grade and second grade, they have toilet rooms out in the hallway. There is a large art / music space, a guidance suite with 3 offices and a conference room, as well as up there to the left is a teacher's workroom. And there's also an SGI on this floor. Okay.
That's this one here.
Yep. Far left.
Small group
Small group instruction. Yep. Sorry.
Special ed classroom.
Yeah. So on the second floor, this space is a nice large area. So we have a nice media space as well as a STEAM lab. Right now, it's one of these rare conditions where we have more space than we actually need. So we have a lot of flexibility for offices, and if we need to expand, we can kind of make it an additional SGI, an additional reconstruction. up in this area.
I'm going to talk a little bit about traffic. Your consultant couldn't be here tonight, so what I did is I extrapolated some of her comments from her memorandum that she put out to give you an idea of what she envisions the circulation. None of these recommendations are final yet, it's still a work in progress, but I figured I'd present it to you anyway. First recommendation, she suggested that we maintain the same entrance and egress off of Hillside Avenue here with a right turn only sign going this way. Circulation would be counterclockwise around the entire site. She also made the recommendations that you could exit onto Bloomfield Avenue this way, making the right, but this would be regulated for emergency access only. And you know, I'm not a traffic consultant, but I'm guessing it's to slow once you have this circulation within inside the counterclockwise circulation. You don't want anybody cutting the line in there. Next slide. And then High Street, she made the recommendation of pick up and drop off along here with no stopping and standing for the last 70 feet, right turn only, and perhaps a speed table to slow everybody down on that particular street. Something like this, anything we do on Bloomfield Avenue, we change the direction of any of the traffic on Bloomfield, you're going to have to go to the county in order to get approval on that. A modification to High Street here, we're going to have to take that to the township. And that's the composite of all of the recommendations. Once again, she couldn't be here tonight, but this is a work in progress. And, you know, final recommendations will make it onto the construction document.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, this is the first revision that she did after she received feedback?
Correct.
Is the idea that parents are continuously dropping off or picking up, or I think
She reiterated to me that this counterclockwise flow would be enough to queue to get enough people in there, get them dropped off, and to come back out onto Hillside and continue left.
is the idea that people line the kids, because usually for Linden and Forest, there's outside lineup and there's parents with their children the whole time. Is this a different business model?
Well, in some sense it is, because it has a parking lot that Forest and Linden really don't have.
Right.
Yeah, but as far as
So is the
lining
parking
up,
lot for parents to park and then deal with their children?
not park, drop off. They circulate, drop the child off, and stay in their cars and continue to leave.
What are the 107 spots for then?
This is not a.
This wasn't intended to be exchange of ideas. What we're doing is, they're just presenting us the current updated plan, and then we discuss and go through it, and then we hold multiple public sessions where we say, these are the options, what do you think? We also talked about having High Street and Hillside residents that we solicit feedback, so please, don't think that we're not taking questions from you about it, but this is preliminary.
It is
Nobody take a
preliminary.
picture.
We are.
No, I have it right.
In the run-up to the referendum, I think probably the most common source of concern among parents was this traffic pattern, because we realize the center of town is incredibly congested no matter what we do. So again, this is just the first iteration. No worries.
But moving on, Central Avenue, we're talking about a demolition package, opening bids early in September to get the demolition started on that facility. We had 2 months locked out for the total demolition, which we believe is more than enough for what we're trying to achieve there. The secondary package, which would be the construction package, we're looking at a mid-October bid opening with a mid-December award, which would give the contractor a solid 8 months to put that school back together. So some examples of what Central hopefully will look like in October. Ridgewood Avenue, the design for Ridgewood Avenue and Central are kind of running side by side. We're working very closely with partner engineer Chris Morris in our bi-weekly design meetings. But they're running basically side by side. We anticipate the same bid and award schedule the same bid and award schedule at mid-December. And once again, I mean, Kathy could talk a little bit about the ordering of UVs. I mean, she's in the middle of one right now where she's trying to get 3 of them ordered from Train. But in any event, if we get the contractor out of the gate early enough in January, get the units ordered, that's the longest lead time typically on these types of projects, is the mechanical equipment. So the goal is to get them out early, get the equipment ordered, so when June 15th comes, you know, they're going full speed on replacing all the UVs. And then Linden and Forest follow the same design schedule. You know, once we have the other 2 projects, Central and Ridgewood Avenue on the street, we're going to follow behind with the design of both of those. And we're looking at a bid and an award sometime in February or March, each one of those. Kathy, is there any comment you want to make on the schedule to this point?
It's just really just a much more detailed schedule. It's really more of a tool for our team, laying out all the approvals we need and tracking, you know, when we get the documents, because like Heather pointed out, getting out to bid on time and getting the contractor awarded so he can order the equipment is really crucial to making our summer deadline. And so we just have a more in-depth way of tracking approvals and whatnot amongst our team and also for the board, so we can make sure that we get everything done for the summer. And I think this first version is the original, and then we recently updated, and so far we're tracking right on target.
I just wanted to confirm, so you can actually do the HVAC at Ridgewood in the summer? Because I had the impression that Ridgewood was going to take longer than that.
That's correct. What the committee and our partners have discussed most recently was if we can get the design complete this fall and go to bid in December, we can get ahead of both the construction season when most schools are sending their bids out, also ahead of the manufacturing queue, so we can get our equipment manufactured in the beginning of the year and have everything positioned and prepped for the day after the last day of school, commencing with the big HVAC project, which is Ridgewood Avenue. It's the most substantial. And that if we manage it tight and we have a good contractor, that we think that we can complete that in one summer, which was we were anticipating a more complex design, multiple years, more disruption, and we've been convinced by our partners that we think this is doable, given you know, the comments that I made before, all the qualifications that we need to do, but that's the way that we're going to be proceeding for now.
And come April 15th, when we shut down the heating season, there will be some work that will commence in and around the boiler room. I know my consultant's working very closely with all of his group to figure out a way to start installing the boilers before we take the old ones out. That's how small the units are going to get. So they're strategically placing them in the empty spaces that we do have in the boiler room to expedite that portion of the construction, and then come back and demo the old equipment, you know, in the summer. So we will see some activity in the boiler rooms before the end of the school year.
Actually get on site.
So that's scheduled. The only other thing I can say with regard to what's going on behind the scenes, we're coming up on 50% design development on both Central and Ridgewood Avenue that we're going to be passing off to Epic to do their cost estimating to see how we're stacking up to the budgets that we projected 2 years ago. So that's our next goal, and of course we're always trying to do whatever we can to better that design schedule in order to get these things on the street as soon as possible. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to field them at this point.
board members first, and then any questions from the group?
Bidding, and the other are described as architecture. So it seems as if we have the opportunity to bid all projects simultaneously, or virtually simultaneously. Right? It looks like
It would be very, yeah, it would be very close, yeah, because.
So is it to our advantage to bid it as one, or to bid it as a multiple?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I mean, you could speak to, I would be leery of giving all of that work to one contractor. And that's one of the reasons why we kind of split up the toilet rooms. And in addition to that, I know that Ridgewood Avenue and Central are going to be ready for bidding before, much before Forest and Linden, only because of the lag that we have in the manpower.
Yeah, I mean, you could package them together. I'm not sure that there's a great advantage to that. I mean, I guess as we move forward, I mean, they're on, like Ridgewood and Central are definitely on track to go out at the same time. So I guess we could look at the pool of contractors available at that time and who are interested in bidding. I mean, at some point, you know, there's mid-range contractors that are good, and then at some point you get to a higher level and you get to a limited group, but that limited group can be good, but they're not necessarily all good. So I mean, I guess we could consider that. I mean, I think the way they're,
I'm not
each
suggesting
one
there's
has
a
their
right
own
answer,
focus.
I just was curious what.
Well, I feel like the way they're set up
Presents an
now,
opportunity
whoever
that-
gets each bid has a focus on their own building, and they can stay focused on their own building. So whoever's doing Central does Central, and whoever's doing Ridgewood, and they may attract different people, because Ridgewood is essentially totally an HVAC job, and that may be more appealing to a particular contractor, and Central is a GC, definitely.
Oh, so the HVAC's gonna be part of the GC package for Central?
No, the Ridgewood, no, we
No,
don't, our anticipation.
Yeah, for Central.
Central be one.
Oh, we're not,
Yeah, one
okay, we're not,
GC.
okay.
Paul, I can tell you anecdotally with this summer, that having H&S at two schools and Salazar at the other two schools, I've been able to play one off against the other.
Right.
Like when H&S has given me grief about, oh, you know, how are we supposed to know that we were supposed to do that? I was able to take my camera out and show, well, the guy at Salazar did it, he didn't ask me any questions at all. And it completely shut down their argument. So I've been playing the two of them off each other a lot, and it's a lot of fun for me.
That's great, I'm glad you're enjoying it. And then just another question, unless.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
So the school designing is somewhat unusual in the sense that we've got two grade level entrances, right? So we've got from the hillside serving the pre-K and the K, we've got a level entrance, right? And I believe from this design, you intend to use what are the existing entrances to that building. And then from the High Street side, we have a level entrance serving the first and second grade. So I guess I'm questioning, where's the front door? So is it depending on what classroom you're associated with, or?
Good question. I mean, when we sat with Dirk and we went over these schematics, I know that the administration kind of gravitated to where all the parking was. So that's where the main administrative entrance would be for that. Of course, you keep your pre-K and kindergarten on the ground floor, easy access to in and out of the building. But as far as that secondary entrance, you know, we're going to have to work with the administration to see how that's really going to get used for the.
Well, I mean, ironically, the way, at least I can speak to my experience in Forest, no one uses the front entrance to speak to, right?
I envision that being similar at Central, where the lineup will be by the playground, much like it is at Linden, much like it is at Forest, and they'll be using they use a side entrance at Forest, a back entrance at Linden, but they'd use that ATM entrance. There's a doorway there.
There's a door at each end of the building. There's a door that's obviously off at each step. So Yeah, I could see the playground being a staging area for most of that first floor, and even for all of the ground floor, and then for the second floor, you can even walk up the steps, use that back door, or just walk straight up the steps on the side.
Unless we close it off.
Yeah, I was just curious how the architects themselves were thinking about it, because I think it's kind of a challenge.
Other questions?
I just wanted to clarify, so Dirk's presentation was related to projects, the teacher's lounge, principal's offices, a couple other things that were not entirely, in fact, mostly not using referendum money.
Mm-hmm.
This presentation was entirely referendum money. There were a couple things,
Oh, yeah, that's
the
the
drainage,
drainage in the boys' bathroom in this school being split as part of the referendum.
Just so I'm clear, for Ridgewood HVAC, that's this year or next summer?
That's for next summer. Doing that next summer. But we, like I said, we want to get it bid out on the street because of lead time so we're looking at that December date to award the contract, get all that equipment ordered, so when June comes,
the kids leaving out one exit and the contractors
Coming in.
This is what happened at 4.
Other questions? My goodness. Okay, if there are no other questions.
and can I say a word or two?
Oh, absolutely.
On behalf of Jordan and Pease and DRG, it's been a long time, Pete, almost 20 years.
Oh, my goodness, yes.
Almost 20 years. It's been great. I can't say enough about our relationship, what we accomplished here, and I know we wish you nothing but the best of luck. Anything else?
If there is nothing else, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Moved by David, second? Second. Thank you all. Thanks to our professionals for coming. Thank you, Barbara, for your first, this is my 5 year. And thank you to all, everybody.